Welcome to the Digital Insurance Agent Podcast. I am so glad you've chosen to join us today. And with me again is Nikki Coner from Package to Profit. Nikki, great to have you with us again today.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been having a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So we are in number 5 of our 6 episode series, and we are going to talk about strategies for scaling your insurance agency. So it's going to be a great topic. And what we want to get into today is the foundational, strategic, and operational keys to sustaining agency growth. Because the last thing we want to do is be a shooting star that, takes off and fizzles out. So, Nikki, you've helped a lot of agents grow their book of business. What's the first thing that an agent or agency owner needs to understand before they even attempt to scale?
Oh, goodness, that's a really great question. And I love this because I feel like the response and how you respond to this answer either causes you to burn out, um, or it causes you to actually scale, right? And so the biggest thing that people need to understand is in order to scale, it's not about you doing more. It's about what's working that you can lean in on, or what's not working that you need to change and do differently. So that's the biggest thing. So one of the questions I wrote to myself regarding this one was, what would it take for my agency to produce double the results without doubling my time, energy, or team? And so this leads to, do I need to automate my quote follow-ups, right? Or, lead touch points. Do I need to create templated journeys? I shared in one of the episodes how one of my clients, the they were doing welcome calls for every single client because they were so afraid of, well, what if one of my agents take these clients and start their own business, right? And so, like, what is it that you need to add and do differently? And then also building layered compensation plan to reward the performance, right? Not necessarily their presence. um, I know how hard it is to find good people, but good people do exist. And just rewarding the fact that they're showing up is not going to drive the numbers, right? Sometimes, agency owners, with them coming from the executive space and them wanting to launch, they have this kind of like, as you will, I want to be your friend type of vibe, and you can't be your team's friend, right? So you need to focus on, how you can reward their performance and not their presence. Another tip that I have too is to systematize before you strategize, right? So as you're going through, you should be documenting, what are you touching, right? What are some things you want to see enhanced? Just write those down, right? In a journal. And as you're going through, you can always figure out, this is how I want to relieve myself or remove myself from it. Um, and I have quite a few.
Yeah. Well, and I'm catching really a kind of a thought here. It's almost becoming self-aware in a lot of
Mhm.
ways of where you're at and being honest with yourself about where you're at. I think a lot of times agency owners and agents get so bogged down in the day to day, they never step back and take that 30,000 foot view and look at themselves objectively. Um,
Mhm.
and that's kind of what I'm hearing. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, so I feel like there's a myth that's going around that a growth ceiling exists, and the growth ceiling is rarely about like lack of vision, right? It's usually about your back end, um, the way that your systems are set up. Can it be able to stabilize my lead flow, right? Or stabilize my business to where it can scale? And so that's not the case. I was just actually on Facebook today. There's a company that just added free leads to their um, free leads to their systems where they don't have to pay for it. Well, I would say for 100% of my clients right now, leads is not their issue.
Yeah.
Right? Always. They were like, the leads are classified and these are the best leads. Well, the leads mean nothing if you don't have a system to outreach and be able to even handle the capacity of the free leads that you are getting, right? Because people have excitement for up to maybe 72 hours on a traditional offer. But when it comes to insurance, that's more like 90 minutes,
That's
right?
right.
If that. And they're going to another company. So if you can't even handle the load to be able to grow, then you're not going to be able to do that.
That's fantastic advice. And we talked about that on a previous episode. Speed to lead is so critical.
Hmm.
Um, let's kind of, dive into this a little further because, when somebody hears the word
Hmm.
scaling, um, they often would just want to think, well, that just means growing revenue. But you really want to help people understand it means a whole lot more than just growing your revenue. So, what does scaling mean to you? How would you explain that to an agent that you're working with?
Yeah. So first of all, when it talks about scaling, growing revenue, like I said before, is not about necessarily volume. Um, Scaling is also it is about your vision, right? But it's also designing a business that can grow without you sacrificing the client experience or qualify of life, right? Or your quality of life. And it's also about creating repeatable systems, empowering your team, and expanding the strategy without stressing. And so, first off, before you can scale, when we talk about scale, the first thing I think about is, look, let's talk about where you need to be to even consider that word, right? So before you need to even consider that word, you need to be running a well-oiled machine, right? Already. So you need to figure out what are the components and understand also too, before we get into scale, understand that you're going to break every layer you're going to break, right? Because each system can only hold so much capacity. And that's how you know that you're scaling because it broke. So don't feel discouraged if you're listening to this and you're like, oh my gosh, like I feel all over the place. And it's just because you're in a different season and you need different things. And so with that, when you're talking about scaling, you're having a system in place where you already have a lead flow. You can currently handle that lead flow, and then you're actually converting at the level that your team needs to convert in order to be a sustainable business. Once you get that foundation in line, then that's when you can start looking at the scale, right? So we actually have a scale methodology, and the first one is structure. So you need the structure first.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I'm so glad you brought this up. I think so many listeners don't realize this. You are going to break things. The wheels are going to come off as you grow. And I think too many agency owners don't realize that. They think growth is just a straight trajectory.
Hmm.
And rarely is that the case. So I'm so glad you brought that up. When agencies do hit a growth ceiling, it's often due to these operational bottlenecks. What are some of the top operational inefficiencies that hold agencies back? And what can they do to fix those?
Yeah. So one of the things is the thing that holds them back is manual, outdated processes. Most of the agents that I work with are very, very old school, and it's to the point where it is costing them their business. And I don't know if I shared this with you. Was it last week? Yeah, it was last week. So, I actually drove around to agents who told me no, that they didn't want our help. 95% of them, their doors are closed today. And that was literally like 8 months ago, the last time I touched base with them. And some of them, their phone numbers still worked. And they went home. They had to let go of their team and so forth. And so they just didn't want to learn anything new. They wanted to do that pen to pad type of situation, and that's only going to get you so far, right? Especially with the way things are going with insurance and you're losing book of business or lines of revenue. You have to get strategic. Another thing as well, an operational efficiencies is the lack of defined roles, right? So there's too many hats within the office and within the team, and not enough ownership. So there's not enough people of like, hey, this is where you deal with this. Hey, this is where you deal with that. The my teams who are in the top 5% of their company, they do this very, very well. When you go into the office, you're not having a person dealing with policies, dealing with sales, and dealing with this, right? The ones that are in the top 5%, they have systematic roles within the office, and they're able to delegate and pass as it's coming through the phone instead of being like, oh, I'm the person on the phone. Let me go ahead and help with this person, knowing a portion of your revenue or your check is commission based. And then lastly is no centralized systems, right? And so it's, I don't believe automation and just throwing in CRMs is the answer. You need to have a system and you need to have a strategy behind how you're going to use it, and the touch point, just like the roles. It's automation and systems, they're just like another employee.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's critical, what you bring up. The system isn't the magic bullet. There has to be a strategy with that system, and
Hmm.
you have to know where you're going with that. And I think that's just such practical advice that you're giving here, Nikki. What
Hmm.
are some of the systems or processes that every agency needs to have in place if they're even going to attempt to scale?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I was holding back a little bit because I knew this question was
You
coming.
knew it was coming.
Yeah.
Like you've
um,
seen these questions.
right. And so the systems and processes to be in place in attempting to scale is number one, a consistent lead to close process, sales process. And so you need to understand your sales process. And a sales process is from the time someone hears about your office to the time they actually swipe their card and close. You need to know how quick your sales process is. Are these people that day one they're wanting to, move forward with you, which is what you want to be in this industry, right? And if you're not, it's okay. Figure out what are those who are in the top 3%. What are they doing that's different from you? That is, having them have those one call closes and they're not going around to shop around, and without a shadow of a doubt, they're working with them, right? So you want to have a consistent lead to close process. Um, and in order to have a consistent lead to close processes, are you educating them, in the process? Are they constantly seeing your name throughout, your marketing? And, do they trust you? Do they know, like, and trust you, right? That makes a huge conversion piece as well. Another thing is an automated onboarding for clients and team members. Okay, so it's not just when we talk about automation, but we also talk about clients and team members. You want to be able to create a stellar experience for both sides because it's going to show up in your sales. Another thing is clear KPIs and accountability. Does your team know what they need to meet? I cannot tell you, I can tell you, 100% of the offices that I've gone into, the owner is like, oh, well, they know what they need to be doing. And then when I sit down and I go in a private room and I'm talking to their team, confidential, right? I'm like, okay, well, do you understand what your metrics are? Oh, you want to go to Disney World this year in December. Do you know what you need to do in order to qualify or be able to pay for your family to go to make that $8,000 that you're wanting to make additional to make that happen? And a lot of times they don't know, they don't have the clear KPIs. And in this marketplace, the KPIs are changing pretty rapidly, right? And so you need to have someone in your office that's being able to communicate that. And most importantly, a documented client journey, right? At any given time, your team should know where to go on the client's journey with your office, of where they need to go on each phase and each stage. And that's huge.
Excellent. And then how do you, when you come in, how do you help agency owners delegate more effectively, so that they get out of this operational operator mode and really become the leader that they need to be?
Yeah. So I have them, okay, I'm just give you a little piece because I would love for clients to show up ideally to their profit post audit with this ready. But it doesn't always happen. So I have them write their task. I have them just brain dump, right? I have them write it out. They do an activity where they write out all the tasks, right, that is needed within the company. Usually they don't have this. Some have it, but it's outdated because they took it from another company. Either they got their books from or someone that's mentoring them in the industry of what they've used. So it may be a little outdated, but I have them write every single task that goes on within their office. And then once we have those things written out, then I have them divided into one side, does this need my voice? Or does this need just need my vision, right? And so your voice is you have to get in there, you have to actually do it and so forth. And 9 times out of 10, if it's not dealing with, life or retirement type policies, it's usually they just need the vision and the team can execute it if they just know what to do. And so we divide those up and then we train and trust team members to take the wheel. And we also create systems and scorecards to keep everyone aligned, accountable, to make sure that we're giving them points, right? We're giving them feedback. I went into an office recently where the owner was wanting to get rid of the employees and, I was just talking to her. She was just telling me about what the employee was doing. And I said, well, is she aware that you're, wanting to give her the boot and cut her? She's like, yeah, well, she should know, right? And there's no accountability. The girl had no, like when I did my one-on-one with her, the agent had no idea that she was on the chopping block. She was talking about long term with me in her conversations. She was talking about being here 3 to 5 years. She thought her activity was, you know, keeping her job, right? Or, she was keeping her pay. And I was like, no, you need to communicate this with her better. And so we create those scorecards so they can know, okay, just like when you're in school, right? People forget when they get out of school, like people still learn that way. They
Yeah.
need the feedback. They constantly want to know, how am I doing? How am I doing? And if they don't hear from you, they're thinking, oh, they're doing okay.
Excellent. Now, as you look at scaling, one of the things that has to come into play is strategic planning, but
Right.
so many agencies actually overlook this step. Why is that?
I would say I feel like um strategic planning not only is it overwhelming, right, to many agents, but and also to not just the know-how, but I think the biggest thing is this industry is changing so much that those who and that's why I love the space that I'm in because I have eyes in a way that an agent who's in the frame cannot see. And just like their mentor is in the frame and they can't see. So I have eyes on the outside to be able to help them and maneuver through this. But the biggest thing is just like, well, what's going on? And am I catching up? Right. Staying ahead of the curve. Like that's what we're here for is to be the GPS. And so that's the biggest role that strategic planning plays is to have GPS. And so what we do is we actually start with a 90-day plan so that it becomes digestible, it becomes doable, and then the agencies that win are the ones who make the quarterly check-ins a non-negotiable. For the ones who kind of take it like, oh, that's nice what Nikki said, and then I come and check in on day 30, and they haven't done a check-in call for 2 weeks. You know, that those are the ones that are struggling. So
Mhm.
making sure that, the strategic planning is non-negotiable.
Excellent. And then once they put this strategic plan in place, and that you've kind of alluded to this, how often should they be reviewing and revising that plan? And really, who on the team should be involved in that conversation?
Yeah, so we initially started with doing 1 year plans. And we realized how not only much this industry was changing, but we realized how hard it was to keep the agent's attention. right? Because they're not so used to that. So what we do is we focus on the 90 days. I still do the full year for them, but I only give them the next 90 days.
Yes.
And then once we deliver on those next 90 days, we then review, we recap, and then we keep moving forward. So I give it to them in layers. So um, they do share with me though, what is their 1 year vision? Like, where do they want to be at the end of, December, right? Going into January, how did it feel? Right. Um, and then we break it into quarterly goals. Again, I only, as I'm doing the intake, when I give them the relief, I only share the 90 days. I only share quarter 1 with them, the next quarter. And then I also assign owners and metrics to each goal. So I show them on a um on a map. I showed them how each role, how each person's on the team role affects the other person, right? It was so deep. I did one for one office, and one person in the office, I asked her, I was like, what was your biggest takeaway? And she was like, I realized how my role and me saying, hey, I'm gonna go pick up my daughter early from school today because I want to take her out for ice cream, or I want to do this, how this is impacting Susan, because now Susan, when I'm gone, I'm working less and I'm leaving, even though the agent of the office is allowing this behavior to happen, right? She's realizing how her neglect, as you will, is affecting her partner. And so she started showing up differently. She started taking more accountability and understanding that, hey, Susan is spending her Saturdays where she could be spending with her kid because here I am over here not taking my hours seriously at work. And so that's one thing. Also meeting bi-weekly to track progress. So when we initially start, we do weekly. And then as I start feeling, confident in the team and feeling like they can, we go into bi-weekly. But initially the first quarter, we do weekly. And then we celebrate. One of the biggest things that I realized is your team doesn't celebrate the way that you do, oftentimes in their wins. And so let's figure out what that means for them. So once we celebrate, we're also going to review what is working, what is not, and then we refine that and fix it and move forward.
That's great. And you really are bringing us into this idea of people and culture. And,
Mhm.
one of the things that we often find is the people who got you to the place you're at are not always going to be the people who are going to get you to the next stage.
Woo.
And so that brings us to this next question,
Can we talk about that? I,
Yeah.
I would just say I agree. Sometimes your day, I tell my agents this before we start this process. Sometimes your day ones are keeping you from your day twos.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. As much as you love them. Yeah.
Mhm.
So that being said, what should an agency leader be looking for when you are looking to expand your team to support your growth?
Um, so one thing that you should be looking for is you should be hiring for coachability, right? Are they coachable and are they able to do the things that you're able to do? And one of the things I do is I give my agents some questionnaires to ask during the interview process that really changes things, right? We do interviews completely different. They learn my method, but it really increases the retention rate of the team. And for those that we do keep, it usually their raises their game too. Another thing is, are they a culture fit? Right. I actually just did a training just today, actually. I'm literally leaving a training to do this. And one of the things I discussed was some of the agents were saying, hey, I wish, Jen was here, right? Jen is one of the leads of the office, and she wasn't there. And I said, if you guys create this as a culture, Jen will tap right into it. If you take this into your everyday type of habits, she'll just jump right in. So you need to find somebody that can fit into the culture, that can add value to what you're doing without you having to convince them to do it, right? And then you also want to look for people who align with your values. Um, are they emotionally intelligent, right? Are they able to be able to take a licking and keep on ticking, is what I like to say. And are you hungry? I mean, and are they hungry to grow with you, right? Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so critical, and I'm sure you probably echo this to your uh, teams. One of the things that we emphasize all the time is you have to build the organization you want to have, not for the organization you currently have. So be hiring those A players, and be a talent scout all the time.
Yep.
So good. And that brings us really to changing the way we think as leaders.
Mm.
So what mindset shifts have to take place to move that agent from producer to CEO of their organization?
Oh goodness. The biggest mindset shift is to stop measuring your worth by how many quotes you write. Um, it's almost like a badge of honor, right? For agents to talk about, metrics and what they're doing. And one of the biggest mindset shifts that I have to work with my agents is to it's not it's not what's taught, it's what's caught. So are you teaching it to someone else that can duplicate what you're doing, right? Or is your system so institutionalized to where it only applies to you and no other diverse personalities can take it on and be able to reach and obtain that goal? So that's the biggest shift, is to make the leader understand that it's not about them, but it's about empowering producers to be the best.
That's great. And as we kind of land the plane here, for those who are listening and they feel like they're stuck at a plateau, they just kind of keep hitting this ceiling, maybe struggling to break past it. What's one action step they could take this week that would move them towards scalable growth?
Yeah. Um, I intentionally planted this seed throughout this interview. So just start with the self audit, right? Write that out. What are you still touching? We often call it bottlenecking, but what are you still touching within your agency right now? Then you ask yourself what needs to change for the business to grow without you being in every seat. That's your next move. We even have a spreadsheet that we do this on. And once we categorize all the tasks that needs to be done, then we have a drop down of like, okay, this is Susan's job, this is Joe's job, this is, and so we slowly start delegating and getting that off of the owner's plate. But
Fantastic. And Nikki, where can our listeners learn more about you? Where can they connect with you and really get started? Because you've just scratched the surface. You've got a lot more to offer them. How can they get involved with you?
yeah, so you can go to packageyourprofit.com and you can actually go to our info session. So you can join our info session where you're able to come and ask questions. We also have what's called Scale Talks. So if you look under resources on our website and you click on Live Collective, you'll be able to join our Scale Talks, which gives your team actionable steps and tips every week. And if you
Fantastic.
are not able to catch us live, it's recorded. So
Wonderful. Well, Nikki, it's been great having you again for this fifth episode. And for our listeners, we've got one more episode with Nikki. You're not going to want to miss it. We're going to wrap up this 6 episode series talking about from agent to architect, how to design your legacy agency. So be sure and catch that one with us, Nikki. Thanks again. And thank you for tuning in to the Digital Insurance Agent.
thank you.